Hello, everybody. Cam K here once again with the Stickers and Scuffs podcast. We are here for our post race. Not sure what's going on with my camera right now. It's losing focus of some sort. That's okay. We don't really need to have a huge focus. We are here talking about the NASCAR All-Star Race finale. Listen, I'm going to be frank. I don't I didn't really get into the entire thing. I wasn't really a big fan of a lot of what they did. There's a lot that I think we as race fans and NASCAR specific fans would like to see, and I don't know what the consensus was, but to me it does come across as if this was not at all what a lot of people were looking at. This is, I mean, I talked about it earlier in the night when we did our review. How you doing there, Maddie? You've got to do something better than this. Obviously, I think the last 10 laps were great, but what a lot of people are mentioning is, oh yeah, this was so good, this is good. You have to remember one thing. How you doing, Gigi? Nice to see you again, my friend. The last 10 laps of a race cannot justify being successful. I have said this time and time again. If you were to told me that if they did the NASCAR All-Star race at Stafford instead of SRX yesterday, I think we would have been way more into it. At the end of the day, it is for gimmicks. It is just to put NASCAR on a show. And I'll be honest with you, there were moments where I was not disappointed. I got into some of the racing. The racing was, was okay, but I would say I'm okay with the package in this race. It wasn't horrible, but I think just too much gimmicky stuff at the end of the day. I understand it is all for it is all for fun, but I think, like I said before, not going to say Bristol for a short track race. It's not, you got to go somewhere even smaller than that. Make it a really big deal for the smaller short tracks. It's tough because there's not really a lot of solutions that I find that would be useful for this series. I don't know whether they need this. And I'll be completely honest, is I don't, in this day and age, I think those that are in Ontario can vouch for it. $1 million won't even get you a house in Ontario. It's not that big of an incentive, I feel, but I get why they did. Now, there's supposed to be some sort of announcement, I believe, that Texas is supposed to make. I would imagine that maybe they're mentioning that they're going to be back next year at Texas, or they're announcing the actual race next year. I'm not sure. Stephen Ellis, a good buddy of mine and occasional co-host, he mentioned that we tried a short track last year and it didn't work. He thought today was okay. It was good. Yeah, I thought Bristol was an awful race last year. But I also think it's different depending on the type of race that we could potentially have and where we could potentially go. I'm missing chats here. The Bok Choice. Nice. Welcome back, the Bok Choice. Kyle Larson has the most pure talent of anyone since Tony Stewart. He wins every kind of race he enters and now is in the best equipment. with Hendrick. I think he's going to continue, but they need to put the All-Star race back to Charlotte where it belongs. You know what? Yeah, I would agree with that. Skins, nice to see you, my friend. Glad to have you on the chat with us. Yeah, I again, Kyle is always going to have a little bit of a mixed feeling for me, only because, and I get everybody deserves a second chance, but to me, again, I will always feel that he got a best case scenario where somebody like Kurt Busch, who I felt didn't do something as egregious. Obviously, Kurt made his own mistakes and opened his mouth too many times, but um, I feel like that the redemption story would have been much better if he had to work his way through. But you can't state that Kyle does not have un unfathomable talent. He is in that it's not just, and I'm not gonna bok choice. I'm not singling out your comment and saying that he's not every bit of talent that you're saying, but I have to say his veteran leadership is what they needed. And I get he's not that much older than everybody else at Hendrick, but he was ready to take the reins. And I really feel that Chase Elliott maybe didn't need to be the leader of that team. I think having Kyle Larson, it's showing that, and listen, they've all won this year. They are a very, very interesting series. This whole team, and I will say that those last 10 laps were probably the best I've seen at Texas in a long time. So if that's what we can have on a weekly basis at Texas, I'm all for that. But we don't typically get that, unfortunately. Yeah, Steven mentioning again, it was Bristol. It was not good. It was not good. You're right. Steven's 100% sure. It was 100% right. It was not a good race last year. It was completely Chase Elliott's from drop of the green flag. This, at least, we got to see some changes and inversions. And I still think, like I said, if you were able to do this system, maybe not so many. I also feel like they didn't. A lot of people were pointing out, and William Richard from Opinions was putting this out on Twitter. And remember how? Does anybody remember? They should remember the All-Star Pit Crew Challenge and how much effort was put into that. Not only that, way back when there used to have the Pit Crew Challenge and the Clevite Engine Builders. Now, if anybody remembers those competitions, those were friggin' amazing. They were so much fun to watch. And, we don't have Clevite anymore as part of the series, but the All-Star Pit Crew Challenge was so much fun to watch. It was, with Larry Mack and Mike, they really made it feel like a big deal. And unfortunately, the pit stop thing that they did today was not, they didn't really care at all to make it a big deal. Skins, just go back to North Wilkesboro already. So the more and more I hear about North Wilkesboro, the more intrigued I am, obviously, about it. Camping World seems to be involved in there, and there's talk more or less that maybe they're not going to do naming rights, but they're going to put a Camping World store on the site to try and keep it an active site, maybe pump some money into it. This is where I kind of feel there's a lot of talk that NASCAR wants a dirt race. And in some of the people that we have interviewed on the show, they've mentioned that they really think that North Wilkesboro, because of kind of the state that it's in, is going to be the one that's turned into a dirt track. And that's what's going to happen with that track. Ultimately, I could see that the All-Star rotates every year. I can see that. Bok Choy is NASCAR to take one on the chin and understand if it's not broke, don't fix it. Skins, Brad Keselowski has the most talent. Brad is certainly making his case. Now, I worry about what's going to happen with Brad going to Roush. I don't know if that really is going to make Roush better, because I think we looked at when Ryan Newman moved in. Now, Ryan has not been Ryan Newman since he moved and after his accident. He was looking much better before that whole accident happened last year. GG, was it a broke Bok Choy? Ratings have been declining in NASCAR needs to. Yeah, they did. I think that at the same time, GD, they went really a completely different way. Um, the problem is that they're looking for a quick fix, and that's not really realistic. Uh, at the end of the day, it is not a 1 week fix. This is a year-long problem. And I think that what they're going to be able to do is by having races. Say, I'm really excited for Nashville. And a lot of people would remember Nashville didn't put on the best races when we used to go there, but it's new and it's exciting. Why did I tune into Texas, even though I'm not a big fan of Texas Motor Speedway? It's new, it's different, and that's what they've needed to do year in and year out. So I do think that there is a degree that they did need to look into updating and changing things around. Obviously, there's going to be changes with the car. Now, there's people throwing out all sorts of uh, all sorts of various interesting ideas. Like the last 10 laps, they were going to run the new cars. There was people thinking that, well, and overall, this was a lot more gimmicky. This is what we were expecting. Bok Choi's BK is going to struggle, in my opinion. First year at not junior, it wouldn't. I mean, at Roush Fenway is, I think, where he's going. He's not going to junior because I don't see the speed. I feel like they're getting closer, absolutely, Bok Choi's, but I agree. I don't see it yet. I think Roush is still a long way to go. I wish when they brought back Nashville, they would have left it as the same track. Are you referring to the fairgrounds or are you referring to the speedway? The super speedway is, as far as I know, it's staying the same. Let's see. Bowman Gray, North Wilkesboro, just sitting there. Stafford 2. Daryl is saying on Twitter. Stephen Ellis, from a racing perspective, stay away from Bowman Gray. And obviously, North Wilkesboro needs a ton of work, but if it's fixed up and only used for the All-Star race, I'd be okay with it. That is a great idea. I like that from Stephen Ellis. That's a very good idea because you want North Wilkesboro to have prestige. They're talking about making it, a dirt race. To me, that's not very interesting. But if you make it all about throwback, if you do an all-star race at North Wilkesboro with throwback paint schemes, that makes it way more, interesting. Oh, JR Jack Roach. I'm sorry, Bok Choice. Thank you. I wish that, look at Matt Kenseth. He is no wash up and he couldn't do anything. No, he's not a wash up, but I think we all know that team is not and has not been the same for years. Since they lost Carl Edwards, they have not been anywhere close to competitive. Chris Buescher has shown some tendencies, but I don't see it. This whole process tonight was different with partial ownership as well. That could lead to them potentially pumping in money into the team. Yes, absolutely, G. Especially because Brad has his own company, and it's believed that company is going to be responsible for bringing in some of that money. So Brad has a couple of those companies that were featured on his trucks that would be on there, like Draw Tight, I believe, is one of those companies. I'm not going to remember the other ones because it's been so long since BKR was around. Cooper Standard. So potentially there's ideas there. There's rumors out there that maybe there'll be 3 cars for Roush. Maybe they go back to 2 cars. To me, I also would like to see a change. And what I mean by that is I don't want to see the 6 and the 17 again. I want them to switch things up, make it, maybe do the 6 and the 16 again. I know obviously Cowlick would have to give it up, but I think they could definitely do some changing in the series. And obviously with Cowlick coming in, there's going to be room for this team to potentially move up or down in the running order. And I like what Brad can do on a weekly basis. He still is quite young. If you think about where he is in terms of his career. He won a championship in his like second or third full season. So he's got that experience, but I feel if he does make that change, it'd be very, very interesting to see if anybody comes with him. We know already Discount Tire had a relationship with Roush Fenway Racing for many years before they moved to Penske. So it could very well be something. He's 37, exactly. So he's not even in his 40s. And what we've seen, Maddie, is the resurgence of drivers when they hit their 40s. Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin had a major career surgence when they hit their 40s. Now, it tails off pretty quickly as we're seeing this year, but 37 years old is better than I'd say Ryan Newman. I love Ryan Newman. I really do. I've been a big fan of his, but I don't see him being the answer. I don't know whether Newman is in the position to commit to try and help a team or if he wants to kind of help himself. Now, I've been on social media spreading as much as I can that I really feel Ryan Newman's best choice is to go to, say, the Truck Series or even Xfinity Series and run the last couple of years of his career. Because I feel if they put him with, say, a Thor Sport or you put him with the GMS, Ryan Newman could potentially win a championship. He could be that good again. But like with Biffle going to KBM, maybe you take something like John Hunter Nemechek moves back up into Cup and that 4 truck becomes available. To me, I don't look at Corey Heim and go, that's the guy. I would love to see Ryan Newman be able to go back and run to that series because that is what the Truck Series was all about for so many years. I would love that. I think many people would like to see Ryan Newman go out kind of with wins. He's been around since 2001. It's like he and Kurt Busch, Kurt seems to have a bit more in the tank than Ryan does. And that can just very well be because of the circumstances. I don't know a ton of wrecks with Kurt Busch that really kind of stand up to the wreck that Ryan had at Daytona. So if you can, guys, give us a like, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. We'd love to have you on the channel and we'd love getting to chat with race fans and I want to hear your thoughts. That is all what we're doing here. We are breaking this down. We are talking about the All-Star race. I'd love to hear your suggestions for next year's All-Star race and what you actually thought of this event. Whether it was the Open worth your time, was the All-Star race itself worth your time? And if you do have suggestions, let's see if we can make it, a reality. Obviously there's a lot. I personally would love to see, some sort of a payoff. And I understand that it's not the easiest thing to do, but payoffs make it worth something. That's kind of the hardest thing about having the MLB All-Star game and the NHL All-Star game is it doesn't really mean much. The Pro Bowl, same thing. Now, if you were to say that the winner here, I don't know, of course, it would make it more of a gimmick to say, oh, they get a bye into the second round of the playoffs or something, but it could very well be. Maddie didn't even see the Open. And I would say the Open was actually, it wasn't bad, but it was a bit of a disaster because you had 3 cautions in the first segment. And I think they ran a total of like 3 laps under green. And, at the end of the day, we kind of figured who was going to be in competition. I think the biggest surprise maybe was that Bubba Wallace was not voted in. It was Matty D. And obviously you get those hardcore, people that really don't like Bubba Wallace that would vote against him in any sort of fashion. But at the same time, Matty D has, you think about how popular he's become just by being himself. And this is, I was really bummed because Eric Jones had really moved up. He was very competitive. And then, of course, he crashed and took Daniel Suarez with him, and they didn't even really get a chance. I feel like that Trackhouse team and the 43 would have been competitive and battling for the lead. And I think that would have made it a little bit more exciting. I think that's kind of the biggest thing about the Open is that it is between kind of the cars that are always on the edge of making it into the All-Star race. So at the end of the day, it was an experiment. That's all this was going to be. It was all going to be about a gimmick. It was going to be about trying to make a big deal about this. It's something that they have to remember isn't going to be the case every year because you're going to have different events. We also have to remember one thing too, is that the fans that they may have had now may not come back for next year because next year things will be back to normal, hopefully, and people will be out. Like Maddie said, he was out at the cottage today. People have the ability to go out. They're not going to want to watch the All-Star race on a Sunday. It doesn't need to be held on a Sunday again. There was no sense if it's going to be a 2-hour event, fine. But anything longer than that, it doesn't need to happen. Gigi, I missed the first half hour, but I felt like the last 10 laps were some of the best Texas could offer. Yes. And if they really want to get crazy, do Charlotte first half oval, second half or oval. That would be nuts if they did try that. I actually was considering that myself where I figured that they could just do the quarter mile. And I was mentioning earlier, Gigi, on our stream earlier that I said, frig, just take out all these drivers and bring them back to when they were little. Make the All-Star race, bring these drivers back to when they are, 10, 15 years old again, and have every single driver have to be in a Legends car at the Charlotte quarter mile. It's fun. Having a race like that would be fun. You have heats. You could invite drivers from all across NASCAR, including modifieds, including Xfinity trucks, Pinties, ARCA. Why not make it an all-star event with all NASCAR divisions available? You could do stuff like this where, hey, if Kevin Harvick doesn't want to participate in the all-star race, like a lot of actual all-star events, that he can choose to sit out, and you could put and have them draft a younger unknown driver in his place. There's a lot of options that they could go this route to if they really want to gimmick it up. Stop making it like an actual race and make it for real fun. If you had all these guys run around in Legends cars, that would be fun on a little short track in Charlotte. And then you could just make it a preview as such, do it on the Saturday, and then make a event on the Sunday for Xfinity. So the All-Star event is there. Maybe we'll throw out that Xfinity idea, but just make something a little bit more genuine. That way you have all these cars, open the track up to let the fans get close to the drivers, get a hero card. I tell you get tons of audience for that if they were going to open it up and allow like driver autographs, make it a full like short track feel. At the end of the day, though, it sounds like the majority of people are split 50-50. Some people really liked it. The other thing, again, that we have to remember, and I brought it up a little bit earlier in this live stream, was you cannot count the last 10 laps as making it a very successful event. That's kind of my biggest thing around this, is there are people that have, and I'm not suggesting anybody in the chat here because that's not what I've seen, but there's people I know on Twitter that have been, last 10 laps were great. That this was fun. No, you can't count 10. I really think though that North Wilkesboro is the place that they're going to they're going to have the All-Star race. It seems like a natural fit. It is still close to the hub. It's a track that if they just repave it, they put a little moonshine, put a little spit shine on it, and it's going to be perfect, you know. And if Camping World wants to sponsor the All-Star race in the future, I could see that as well. Um, there's suggestions that they're going to run it on dirt. I don't particularly like the idea. Um, Toby Christie on social media idea: repave it and add it onto the schedule in place of a track that needs 10,000 gallons of PJ1 in order to run a race. Absolutely. I hate that we have to include PJ1 on racetracks. I think it's so stupid. Fix the problem. Don't go to that track if the races aren't good. The track has to fix it. You know, it's at the end of the day, Eddie Gossage is hanging up his suspenders. He's done with Texas Motor Speedway after this event. So we don't know what's going to happen in the state of Texas in the next couple of years, because COTA's come aboard. Brendan Madonia, who's on the podcast earlier, said that he doesn't expect COTA to be back. And at the same time, I don't really expect Texas to have 2 races again. I don't really expect that and I don't really want, in all honesty, 2 races at Texas. I think what we could be potentially looking at is a bunch of the 1.5 mile tracks only getting 1 event. There's not really, I don't feel there's a need to go to, like, for me, I don't want to go to Atlanta twice a year. I don't want to go to Dover twice a year. I don't want to go to Michigan twice a year. I don't want to go to Las Vegas twice a year. There's not, especially not Texas twice a year. So unless some of these tracks make monumental changes, I mean, I wouldn't even be opposed of seeing, and some of the people that watch sports cars maybe would know a little bit better than me, but I wouldn't be completely opposed to doing a Miami Roval. You know, I know they have the ability to do that there. There's even a road course, I believe, at New Hampshire that they run. Now, to me, obviously, road courses are not the entire solution, but I think we can expect that you're going to see a street race. Whether they do the All-Star race on the streets of Nashville in the future, that could potentially be a possibility. We know that NASCAR is looking at all sorts of ideas for the future. And whether or not they're going to work, I don't know. But I did like that they did some inversions. I thought that was, you know, that's old school Saturday night racing. The coverage was awful. I had to turn some of the commentary off. I thought it was awful tonight. I thought their entire year was really bad. I don't know about you guys, but Fox just is not the place to watch race anymore. They have no, I mean, if they lose Jeff Gordon, it could be better, but even the seriousness that I would have preferred, it just wasn't there. We talked with Cassie Fambro, and you'll see our interview with Cassie Fambro tomorrow on our channel. It releases at 7:00. This was not, it's not what you need. We do not need more of these silly contests and making things a big joke. It just makes the product look really bad, and it makes the racing very lame. I didn't really pay attention so much to Jeff Gordon's homering, but he very much seemed like he was all about Hendrick winning this today, and that was tiresome. It sucks because we go from a team where you have a lead play-by-play guy in Mike Joy, who's very, very good, and maybe the analysts aren't that great, to now NBC, where I find the analysts are much more, I'd say Dale is fantastic. Steve is okay. I'm not really a big fan of Jeff Burton. And then you have a play-by-play guy who's very intolerable and very annoying to listen to. So you kind of need a mesh between the two of them. Obviously, I would be going for Alan Bestwick, but now that he's with CBS and SRX, we were talking about it with Brendan earlier that potentially maybe CBS, I know they're talking that they don't really want motorsports more than SRX, but they did 1.33 million in the viewership. And what I actually noticed is that Global TV had a replay of SRX today, which I have never seen. Global do something like that before. Even back when they did the Molson Indy, that was years ago that they did the Molson Indy, and the fact that they were even showing a replay was phenomenal. But like I said, guys, if you can, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. Let me know how you thought this weekend's events played out. We had a lot of coverage, actually, with myself and Brendan Madonia. We went over the SRX series debut. We went over the IndyCar races 1 and 2 this weekend at Detroit, because there was a lot of interesting things that happened there. And then, of course, we're doing this live stream right now talking about the All-Star race and what it was. So if you can, like I said, guys, give us a like. We got 1 like down there. We need a couple more. Need a couple more of those likes, because we want to do that. GG, the Fox booth commentated like they did the Nascar stuff. They don't take it very serious, and that's the problem. GG, is they don't take it very serious. We want to make this. You want to make it seem like it's actually a big deal, and they didn't. They treat this kind of like it's a joke, and that's where I'm kind of like, I understand the point of comedy of Clint Boyer, but he doesn't need to force it. The whole win Clint's money thing. We talked with Cassie Fambro, and if you watch our interview with her, I mean, we're not big fans of this. I'm not a big fan. We know Clint Boyer's not running out of money. We're not winning his money. We're winning, a pooled amount of money. And that doesn't even mean anything for us in Canada, because we can't win it. So, I get it's a sweepstakes, and I get it's all that, but the comedy needs to be cut down. And I'd like to see a little bit more of a serious product. I think that they didn't focus at all on the pit stops. They didn't even show the trackers. They didn't even track the pit stops, even so that we could even see how fast some of the teams were going. I would love for them to do a pit, competition again. Maddie mentioned it earlier in the chat that he loved it and misses it so much. I think we all do. They did stuff like the Burnout Challenge. They used to even do, if I'm not mistaken, a crew chief race if it's not Legends, it was in those other cars that they would feature, not Bandoleros, but there was another car that they used to have. I don't even know if they still run in the Summer Shootout series at Charlotte Motor Speedway, but I remember Alan Gustafson and Chad Knaus running in that race, and on the drivers were crew chiefs, and it was a lot of fun. The Burnout Challenge was a lot of fun. So they've seemed, and again, like I mentioned before, the Clevite Engine Builders was like a ton of fun to see these actual people come together, and they had to build an engine in the quickest amount of time, and they were all from each team. And then of course the All-Star Pit Crew Challenge, which was a ton of just fun. It showcased the crews. Now we're getting away from that because there's less and less jobs for the crews to do. But I think if they were to bring that back, and Marcus Lemonis is all about, putting his brand on stuff. Well, there you go, Marcus. If he was to sponsor the All-Star Pit Crew Challenge again, I'm pretty sure it would get a lot of love. It is. When I was listening to the Indy race, everything had weight, and then the 600 and all they made is jokes. Absolutely, G. We actually talked about that on this channel. When we were chatting with Cassie, again, our interview comes out tomorrow with her. It was like we were talking about, like, that was some of the best production that we've seen for the Indianapolis 500 in a long time. And then you have the 600, and it's clear that they're bored. Like, they're not interested in the product. Now, tonight, Clint got a little bit excited towards the end of the race, which is great. That's what they need to be like. You have to keep the energy up. And I think, unfortunately, Mike Joy is kind of stuck. He doesn't have guys that try and keep the energy going throughout the entire event, because they get quiet. And it's just like Jeff Burton, just like Dale Jr., and just like Steve Letarte. When action happens, they leave it all to the play-by-play guy, and you can't do that. I'm telling you, as a fan, there's nothing I hate more than Rick Allen screaming at me about something. When you go back 10 years, Wally, Allen, and Benny used to get excited about stuff, as did Larry, Daryl, and Mike. So it was in a collective booth. It wasn't one guy trying to force all this energy on you. And unfortunately, a lot of this chemistry, it comes off so forced. So if Jeff does move on, I think that's the best decision. I think you put somebody in there with Clint Boyer that can be a little bit more exciting. And I don't mean Michael Waltrip. I don't know who that person is. I think Jamie McMurray is good. Jamie has the ability to get excited. I don't know if he's the best option. I know there's talk, if Kurt Busch is available, he would be a good fit. Kevin Harvick, obviously, it just depends if these guys are going to retire. But at the end of the day, that broadcast has to sell the racing. If the racing isn't selling itself, it's their job to make it sound great. They haven't done that. Last night, SRX, Danica, and Allen, they sold fun. That's what they sold. They sold seriousness. They sold, but not completely serious. They sent like a series that was fun and had moments where it was an actual racing series. So overall, I'd love to hear ratings from everybody. In terms of the entire product, with inversions, with 5 to 6 stages, with the color coding of how many they're inverting, what grade are we giving the All-Star race for 2021? Are we giving it an A, B, C, D, or is it complete failure? To me, I have to give it a C because I expected the gimmickness. I didn't hate the last 10 laps. I thought they were very good. But if I was going to say, do we do this again at this track? No, absolutely not. Now, if they can get what they got in the last 10 laps, if they could get that to be, 200 laps at this track, absolutely, I would love it. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be like that. It's not. So we're going to C minus from Matthew Hall. Yeah, I'd probably be along with that. I'm not going to count it as a complete failure or a D, but I'm not going to go out there and say that the full. I fell asleep during it. That's not what you want. You want people to be excited. Apparently, there was Chris Campbell. Hey, thank you for showing up, buddy. They should be doing this at a place like Bristol or Darlington. Well, they did it at Bristol last year. If you remember, it didn't work very well at Bristol last year. So they're going to have to come up with something better because I don't know, man. I personally feel they got to go to even shorter tracks than Bristol, even shorter than Martinsville. They've got to go to like really short track, a small place that can host a good race. Problem is that NASCAR's kind of put themselves in their own bubble, is that they only will go to places that they own, and that's a bit of a failure. So what are we talking about? That's a bit of a failure. It's NASCAR. They do a lot of failures right now. So for me next year, like I said, if they're not going to cancel it, I personally would not mind. You take it back to Charlotte, you do something silly like put them all in modifieds, put them in Legends cars, take it back, do something during the weekend where you can have Xfinity and Truck Series drivers in the Legends as well, and they could compete to try and make it into the race. Make it all. If you're going to go all out, don't do it at the expense of the race teams, because at the end of the day, these teams have so much money that they invest into it. And like, if you're Petty, if you're Trackhouse, is it worth wrecking a car? No, it's not. GG missed the first half hour, so if it was a drag, then my grade lowers. But B minus. Texas is a boring track, but the product was the best the track can produce. I agree with you. There's only like 1 or 2 segments where I found the racing was not very fun and it was kind of dragged out and boring. But for the most part, a lot of the racing was very close. And like I said, if they could package, so I don't know if anybody remembers, if you guys remember way back to when they did this, the new car, was it the new car test? Or when they tried this new package test at Las Vegas, and it was literally like pack racing. for like 20 laps. If they can bundle that, I would be way more interested in watching that week in and week out on mile and a halves than strung out boring bullshit. But that's not the reality, right? I think at the end of the day, Texas is going to have its fans. It's going to have its detractors. There is a lot that NASCAR will change between now and next year. I think we already know they're looking at completely changing things. The new cars are going to come around. The new placements of the numbers will probably be part of it. There's going to be more schedule changes heading into next year. There's going to be new teams. There's going to be definitely some new drivers. Potentially, we could be having an all-star race where maybe you see more than 25 cars in the open. But I will honestly say that NASCAR still this season hasn't been awful. It has been a resurgence from Hendrick Motorsports. I think Kyle Larson, the teams wouldn't care if they could get $1 million. If they have more than that on track on dirt with the potential to wreck big, teams wouldn't care if they could get $1 million if they have. Yeah, exactly. Like $1 million in this day and age doesn't get you anything. It doesn't get you anything. Like, I know I'm talking like it's nothing, but at the end of the day, for these race teams, it isn't anything. If you were to say give an opportunity, like this is an idea. You'll give an opportunity and have them run Xfinity cars, and maybe you get those individual teams that don't have, I don't know, like I'm trying to think about, like, look at the Xfinity teams. Okay. Let's say you get Brandon Milt Motorsports, you get Clements Racing, you get Ryan Sieg Racing, DGM Racing, BJ McLeod's team, Bassett Racing, Mike Harmon Racing, and you get all of those guys have a little short track duel because they're not big name teams and they have to fight for $1 million. Then it means a little bit more. But these cup teams are loaded. They're loaded with money because they have to be. So to me, it means a little bit more when you had the old mom and pop teams that didn't have that type of money. They didn't have the full-time sponsorship. They didn't have the huge sponsorship that Joe Gibbs Racing does, that Hendrick Motorsports does. Now, obviously, I think we all know Kyle Larson is going to have a full-time sponsor. That he's too good not to get a sponsor. But right now, I mean, people are wondering why isn't he a sponsor? Why doesn't he have this? Obviously, if you're in PR, you're not touching Kyle Larson with a 10-foot pole still. Obviously, he's still a very controversial figure based off of what happened last year. And people have to remember, it was only last year. So they've got to give it more time. Obviously, Valvoline is getting out there. They're reaching out. But even Nation's Guard was on his car for a couple of races, and then they've gone over to be with Corey LaJoie. So, it just isn't the same. But I want to thank anybody that's come on and viewed tonight, anybody that's came and chatted with me. This is obviously a ton of fun for me. It's a ton of fun to talk with all of you. So Gigi, Chris, Skins, Matt, I appreciate you guys coming on and chatting with me and chatting about racing. And, I like that we have a little group of people, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Nation's Guard is Matty, but what I'm still suggesting, like, why would they not be on his car and they go to Corey instead? I'm really intrigued though about the silly season this year. I'm really, really, really intrigued by it because, I mean, we potentially could have a ton of new seats. If you're looking at Cowlick's going to have more than likely Justin Haley moving up. Junior Motorsports, hopefully that happens. I would love it if they come up with one or two cars. There's talk, of course, of 2311 having a new car, but then there's also talk JTG is going to go down a car, which seems more than likely. Roush Fenway could expand or retract. So, and then of course you have just those, sponsor news and with the new cars. Could we potentially see some surprising teams? Obviously, BJ McLeod's team, we were not expecting to move up into Cup. So could we see a smaller organization take that leap that maybe nobody's expecting? Could we see like a Ryan Sieg Racing or a Jeremy Clements or Brandon Brown Operation DGM make an effort to put a Cup car out there? We don't know. And that's what silly season really is all about. I think we will see a full-time sponsor come aboard. Kyle, yes, that's right, Matthew. Yes, Trackhouse is looking to expand as well. I was actually a little surprised by that because they don't have a full-time sponsor, and there's been weekends where they're not sponsored. And so I was a little surprised to hear that they'd want a second car. I think what you're looking at, though, and I was talking about this with Brendan yesterday. Look at the Xfinity series for next year, because I feel that series is going to have a ton of movement in the off season, a ton of it, because we're heading into there's a couple drivers that have been in multi-year deals. There's a couple drivers that you would think they've been there for a couple of years. They're ready to move on. And then there's a couple where we don't know their situation. So all three of the full-time competitors for Joe Gibbs Racing, I all feel that there's going to be movement. Daniel Hemrick and Brandon Jones and Harrison Burton, I all feel there's going to be movement there. Now, Harrison Burton, I still feel is the guy that's going to replace Denny Hamlin. He seems like the guy that is a fit for FedEx. If, of course, FedEx is going to stay. And, of course, if Hamlin's going to be moving on next year or in the future, if he retires. Harrison seems like that type of fit. And, I mean, Dex Imaging and FedEx kind of feel like they'd be a good partnership. Not just them, though. I would believe Ryan Preece is on his way somewhere. There's potentially some movement at SHR with Eric Almirola. We potentially could have Riley Herbst moving on from SHR. Noah Gregson from Junior Motorsports. I think we're probably safe with Annette and with Allgaier. I think we can expect those. I think Josh Berry will end up somewhere. Haley Deegan more than likely is going to move. I just don't see that they want to keep her in that ride. Todd Gilliland, will he move into a potential seat at Front Row Motorsports? There's Ryan Newman, Brad Keselowski. I don't even know. I mean, I could go off right now and say that I know all of the free agents, but let me just see here what we got. Matt DiBenedetto. We don't know what's going on with him. So these are the guys currently right now that have contracts for sure ending in 2021. Kurt Busch, Brad Keselowski, Austin Dillon, he's not going anywhere. Ryan Newman, Eric Almirola, interesting. Chris Buescher, that his contract is up at the end of this year. They did state that he's probably going to stay there. Matt DiBenedetto, Michael McDowell, Ryan Preece, Ross Chastain, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Alex Bowman. Unknowns, Quinn Houff, Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, Anthony Alfredo, Cole Custer, Cody Ware, Josh Bilicki, BJ McLeod, and Daniel Suarez. So, and thank you, Jayski, for being the awesome go-to all the time. So listen to that group of people. That is massive. Now, obviously, I think the biggest and most telling situation here is that Kyle Larson has long been linked to the 48. Lon been linked to Ally. Now, he may have lost his opportunity to have Ally as a sponsor. They might not want their Gigi. I hope some of the small teams can jump into the competition and stir things up, whether it be 23XI bringing in veteran experience or anything but the push for the major three teams. If Trackhouse is expanding, Matty D could be a big fit competition. Yes, Matt D could. The problem is sponsorship. Remember, right now he's with the 21, which is sponsored thanks to Paul Menard. But I don't think that they end that relationship with Menards. I don't think Menards leaves Penske to go to, say, Trackhouse with Matt DiBenedetto. I think they really like Ryan Blaney. And if I had to choose, Austin Cindric is going to take over with Menards, whether that's the 2 or it's the 21. It's going to be a very, very interesting season next year for that specific reason, Gigi, because we don't know what the situation is going to be with Matty D. Now, there's talk that Cindric could move to the 2 instead of the 21, and then DiBenedetto stays in the 21. I wouldn't be shocked if we see something like a Riley Herbst move in there because they need the sponsorship. Do I think that Riley deserves that right? No. But I also don't know where you go. We even know like Chase Briscoe doesn't have full sponsorship. But what happens if Eric Almirola becomes available? Well, then Eric Almirola and Smithfield looks very attractive to the 21. Michael McDowell won the Daytona 500 this season. He's had a good year. Chris Campbell actually is mentioning that right now. Hope he lands somewhere good. You know where I actually would prefer to see Michael McDowell is in Xfinity or trucks. And once again, I state that I think he could be a serious contender for the championship if he were to do that. Obviously, I think Michael wants to stay in the series, but I wouldn't be opposed to him returning to Front Row Motorsports. But I do feel that, and I've thought for a while that 38 was, and that 34 is waiting for Todd Gilliland. The partnership with Front Row Motorsports and DGR, it was made for Todd Gilliland. That's the honest truth. There's no way that they didn't create that partnership. They didn't have sponsors that were on Front Row Racing sponsoring Todd Gilliland to then move him somewhere else. Now, it could very well be that Anthony Alfredo is in that 38 for 1 year until they decide they want to move Todd Gilliland in. That would suck for Anthony Alfredo. It would. But I could see that being the case. I really believe that that's what Front Row Motorsports' plan was all along, that they just didn't have the confidence to put Todd Gilliland in the car this year. I think they wanted to get him a bit more truck experience, and I really think that that's what they want. Remember, David Gilliland drove the 38 car for for Front Row Racing for many, many years. It seems like a natural fit. The 38 that's their number. So that's why Todd Gilliland's running it in the truck series. I have no issues believing that he's going to just slot right into the 38. Where the interest is what happens with the 34 then. Is McDowell somebody that I want with Todd Gilliland, or would I want Anthony Alfredo? Well, that's an easy decision. You want the veteran with him. Now, theoretically, could we see Ryan Newman take from the quote kind of middle Ford position at Roush Fenway and move to the lower Ford position? Yeah, we could see that. I think we've seen it with Chris Buescher. He took kind of a longer way to get there, but that's very, very possible. I think Buescher is going to continue to get better. I think if they bring Brad in, that's a great look. Roush Fenway looks much better with Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher on the team. Whether or not Trackhouse does get a second car, they're going to need to land somebody that has sponsorship money. They have to, because right now they don't have somebody that will. So will Matty D be an option? If he's got Menards, sure. He's not taking Motorcraft with him because that's their sponsor. You have other names available potentially that Quinn Houff could be available. Not suggesting that anybody would be willing to take him. I personally wouldn't be shocked if we see a Michael McDowell if they're not bringing him back. If he goes to, say, the 00, if he goes to a team that's really struggling, because he's done that. He did that with Bob Levine's team for so many years, and he helped them out quite a bit. Um, at the end of the day, though, I've always thought that Noah Gregson would end up at JTG. I think Ganassi could potentially be there too. And it's going to be fun, man. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I mean, I could go and talk on. I'm just realizing it's after 11 o'clock and I go to work tomorrow. So, yeah, this has been fun, guys. Um, yeah, this is going to be really fun. I think off-season stuff is always more fun. Um, but I really, really am glad to have you guys step in and chat with me. This was a lot of fun. I want to wish you guys all a very good week. Make sure that you yeah, oof is right, Maddie. Damn, I got to get up at 6 o'clock, so I should go to bed. Um, yeah, it's true, man. Loves really likes McDowell. So I personally would like to see Loves go somewhere else, just because I'd like to see a difference. But um, yeah, this will be fun, man. Everybody have yourself a good week. Make sure you come back, check here, 7 o'clock tomorrow, our interview with Cassie Fambro. And we're going to Nashville, guys, next week. Nashville Super Speedway. Hell yeah. This is going to be a lot of fun. So thank you guys all for tuning in. Have yourselves a great night, and we'll chat you all next weekend.